Story 1. We followed GPS directions that led to a bridge that didn't exist anymore. This happened to me and my girlfriend in late October of 2018. We were taking a road trip through the Appalachian backroads, trying to do something off-grid before winter set in. She had just finished a hard semester of grad school, and I had some PTO to burn. The idea was to spend 3 nights camping through rural Kentucky and West Virginia. Cheap, quiet, disconnected. The second night, we left our site just before dusk. We wanted to find a motel somewhere closer to Charleston because of a weather warning. Thick fog was rolling in. I didn't want to drive too much at night, but she said if we used Google Maps, it should be easy. Around 7:30 p.m., somewhere just north of Harts, West Virginia, the GPS lost signal for a moment. Then it rerouted. No big deal. It said there was a shortcut, something called Richland County Road 12, that would reconnect with the highway in under 15 minutes. It was a smaller road, but we were used to that kind of detour in the hills. The road started as gravel and eventually narrowed into 2 faint dirt tracks. The trees were so dense that even with the headlights, it was hard to see more than 20 feet ahead. Then we saw the bridge. It came out of nowhere, like the trees opened for it. The road sloped down and met a short concrete platform that extended out over a slow-moving creek. It was just wide enough for one vehicle, no railings, no signs. The GPS still said this was correct. The bridge looked old. Moss clung to the edges. The concrete was cracked, and I remember this sound, like something groaning under pressure, when our tires rolled onto it. I slowed down immediately. I leaned forward over the wheel, trying to see the other end. The fog was pooling around the creek, and the headlights barely cut through it. Still, we could make out the tree line on the far side. We were halfway across when it happened. The engine stopped. No sputter, no warning. Just dead. The headlights went dark. The dashboard shut off. The heater cut out. Everything was suddenly still. I turned the key, nothing, not even a click. I checked my phone, but it had dropped signal entirely. Her phone too. We just sat there for a moment, not saying anything. Then we heard it. Water, lapping against concrete. Only it wasn't the gentle trickle we'd heard before. It was heavier now, deeper. I stepped out of the car to check the underside of the bridge. The air felt wrong, too still, like the fog was sucking up every bit of sound. When I got to the edge, I looked down. The water had risen, fast. I don't know how else to explain it. There weren't any storms that day, no rain upstream. But the creek was now nearly level with the bridge surface. A few more inches, and it would start spilling over. I got back into the car and tried again. Still dead. Then we heard something else. From somewhere in the fog, behind us it seemed, there was a creak. Not from the water, it sounded like metal shifting, like something bending very, very slowly. She looked at me, then turned toward the sound. I reached for the door handle again, intending to try pushing the car or at least get it off the bridge. But the moment my hand touched it, I felt it. A tremor, not in the air, in the concrete. The bridge was moving, or something underneath it was. We got out together this time, moving quickly toward the front of the car. The fog was thicker than before. It coiled around our legs and hands like it had weight. We couldn't see more than 10 feet now. But I swear, right before we stepped off the bridge's edge, we heard something else. A hollow knock, like a fist against the metal undercarriage. She turned to look, but I pulled her forward. As soon as our feet touched the ground on the other side, there was a crack, deep and low, like a splitting branch but multiplied and amplified, echoing through the hills. We didn't look back. We ran. We stopped running once we reached a patch of dirt that sloped upward. There was a clearing, an old trailhead with rusted posts and a half-collapsed sign. The air was cold now, the kind of cold that doesn't match the season. The trees opened just slightly here, and we could see across the creek. The bridge was barely visible in the fog, But something was off. There was someone on it. At first I thought maybe we'd passed them. Maybe someone had been walking behind us and got caught in the fog. But the figure wasn't moving, just standing there. Not on the part we had crossed, but further back, where we'd entered. It looked exactly like her. Same jacket, same height, same posture, but it wasn't her. She was beside me, breathing hard. She said something under her breath. I don't know what it was, but her voice was shaking. Then the figure raised a hand. It didn't wave, it pointed directly at her. She stepped back. I pulled her behind me instinctively, but it didn't move. It just stood there, arm out, like a signal frozen in time. Then it started walking, not toward us, along the edge of the bridge. Slow, careful steps, but not natural. The fog didn't move around it. It moved with it. We backed further into the woods. Our only option now was to keep moving up the trail. It looked like it might connect to an old service road. The ground was muddy and there were no lights anywhere. Still, we kept going. I don't know how long we walked, maybe 20 minutes, when the trail dipped again. And there it was, another bridge. But not like the first. This one was collapsed. Half of it had fallen into the creek below. It looked like it had been out for decades. Concrete ripped apart, rusted supports jutting into the air like broken ribs. There was yellow caution tape faded by time. We stopped, looked at each other. This was the same bridge, same dimensions, same alignment, even the same curve of road on either side. But it was gone, ruined. So what had we crossed? I turned back toward the trail, half expecting to see that figure again. But the fog was gone now. The air felt normal again. The night sounds, crickets, wind, even a distant owl had returned. We didn't speak until we made it to a paved road. It was empty. A sheriff's car picked us up at dawn, confused but polite. Said there hadn't been a bridge on that side of the creek in over 40 years. A few days later, once we were home, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I searched online trying to find anything about that area. Road closures, local history, accidents. That's when I found it. An article from 1981. 2 dead in Route 12 bridge collapse. It described a couple who had been driving a late-night shortcut near Harts, West Virginia. They were following printed directions when they crossed onto a bridge that was already under review for structural weakness. It collapsed under them. Their car was found days later, submerged downstream. Their names, Emily Garrison and Tyler Reddin. Her name is Emily, my name's Tyler. I stared at the screen for a long time, trying to make sense of the coincidence, but the article wasn't wrong. It even listed their ages, 27 and 29. We're the same, except reversed. I showed her. She didn't speak. She just stared at the screen like she wasn't seeing it. I've never been able to find that route on any GPS since, not even with the coordinates. The road is gone. Removed from digital maps, scrubbed from navigation software. But that night it was there, fully mapped, voice-guided, real enough to cross. And still, we never saw our car again. We'd left it on the other side. When we returned with the sheriff, the trail was overgrown. No bridge, no vehicle, nothing. I don't tell this story often, not because I'm scared people won't believe me, but because I don't want to know what would have happened if we'd stayed in the car just 1 minute longer. Or if the thing on the bridge had waved back. To this day, sometimes the map app on my phone glitches just for a second, and I always look, just in case, to see if Route 12 has come back. Story 2. The motel wasn't on any map, but we slept there anyway. This happened to us in early March of 2022. We were driving across Pennsylvania, my partner and I, moving from my job in Columbus to hers in Boston. It wasn't supposed to be anything complicated, just a 3-day road trip. Some old friends we'd planned to visit along the way, a few stops at weird roadside attractions. That night was unplanned. We'd been on the road for 9 hours already. The weather was fine, traffic light, but I was drained. She offered to take over driving, but I don't sleep well as a passenger. Around 10:45 p.m., we decided to look for a place to stop. We weren't near any cities, just a couple rural exits, mostly closed or dark. The nearest hotel on the GPS was over 40 minutes away. But then we saw the sign, just a little green metal placard nailed to a leaning wooden post, Windgate Inn, 1 mile right. It didn't show up on our phones. I double-checked Google Maps, Waze, even Yelp, nothing. But the sign had a little vacancy light on. Flickering but lit. We were too tired to argue. I took the turn. It was one of those tight, quiet country roads. No lane dividers, no streetlights. There were tall trees on both sides, and the pavement was cracked in places, like it hadn't been touched in years. But exactly 1 mile later, we saw it. A 1-story building set slightly back from the road, faded teal trim, 8 identical rooms, each with a green-painted door and a rusted sconce above it. The office was lit from within, a yellowish glow that spilled through the Venetian blinds. She hesitated. Does it look open? There was an old sedan parked out front, but no movement. I said, yeah, we check. Worst case, we keep going. Inside the office, the air smelled faintly like lemon-scented cleaning product. Not unpleasant, just dated. The woman behind the counter looked up and smiled. Her hair was pinned back. She wore a loose grey blouse and looked maybe mid-50s. Her skin was pale in that way that looked like she hadn't been outdoors in a while. Just the two of you? Her voice was soft, almost low enough to miss. I nodded. She handed me a key, one of the old metal kinds, not a card. A little plastic tag read Room 4. Cash only, she said. 50 even. I handed her the bills. As I was tucking my wallet away, something caught my eye. There was a mirror behind the desk. A long one, probably meant to reflect the hallway that led back toward a rear office. But the angle was wrong. It didn't show the hallway at all. It showed us, not our reflections exactly, but us standing side by side at the counter. But we were turned slightly in the mirror, both of us facing the opposite direction. My partner noticed it too. She didn't say anything, but I saw her glance down quickly, then back up. Thank you, I muttered. The woman didn't reply. We walked out in silence. The cold hit immediately. The air had shifted. It wasn't freezing, but the temperature drop was noticeable. Almost like the motel had heat leaking out the walls and nothing to contain it. Room 4 was in the middle. We opened the door and I stopped. I don't know how to explain it, but the room felt familiar. Same basic layout as the bedroom I grew up in. Bed against the left wall, desk under the far window. A tiny TV mounted in the corner with a dangling remote. Even the wallpaper, a faint faded floral print, looked identical. She said nothing for a few seconds. Then softly, "This looks like my old house." I turned. She was staring at the small nightstand. On it sat a dusty alarm clock with a scratched plastic face. The numbers were glowing red, but something was off. They were moving backward, slowly, each second ticking away in reverse. I bent closer. The column between the hour and minute still blinked every second, but the numbers, they were subtracting. 12:48, 12:47, 12:46. "Probably broken," I said. She didn't respond. We set down our bags and tried to get comfortable. The room wasn't cold exactly, but there was no thermostat, no vent, no sound of a heater kicking in. Just a steady low hum, like an old refrigerator somewhere behind the wall. I lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling. She flicked off the light. That's when I noticed something else. The lamp switch made no click. The next thing I remember is waking up. It wasn't gradual. It was like blinking once and suddenly it was morning. I sat up. The clock said 10:32 a.m. only. It wasn't the same clock. The numbers were normal now, green instead of red. The ticking was silent. She was still asleep. I got up and opened the curtain. The parking lot was empty. No cars. Not even the old sedan from the night before. But what really caught me off guard was the road. It was buried in dust. Not dirt, not gravel. Thick, grayish-tan dust, coating the lot, the road, even the bushes along the edge. It looked like no vehicle had passed through in weeks, maybe longer. I stepped outside. The air was still. No wind, no birds, just silence. The other motel doors were all closed. No lights on in the office. No sign of the woman from last night. I tried her phone. No signal. Again. Mine was showing full bars. I tried calling a random hotel down the highway. It rang twice, then dropped. Tried Google Maps. It loaded, then reloaded. No Windgate Inn, no dot, no marker, no trace. I walked to the office door and knocked. No answer. I pushed the door slightly. It was unlocked. Inside, the layout was the same. Same desk, same mirror. But the lights were off, and the room was cold, really cold, the kind of cold that creeps into your joints. There was no receptionist, just an empty counter and a single chair. On the desk sat a receipt pad, blank. I looked at the mirror again. This time it showed nothing, just an empty space, no reflection, not of me, not of the room, just absence. I backed out and returned to the room. She was sitting up now, pale, quiet. "I had a dream," she said. I waited. We were kids, but in each other's houses. I was in your room, and you were in mine, but everything was in the wrong place. She rubbed her eyes, and someone was knocking, but not on the door, on the wall. We packed up quickly. I didn't like how long the dust had sat. Something about it made my stomach churn. When we tried to leave, the tires kicked up a storm. The dust was inches thick in places. It scraped against the undercarriage like sandpaper. Once we got back on the highway, everything seemed normal. Just quiet. She didn't speak much. Neither did I. When we got to Boston, we tried to retrace the route. The GPS history said we'd taken Route 70 through Breezewood, then east. But there was no detour listed. No point where we had turned south, no Windgate Inn, just a 4-hour gap between two highway exits. Later that week, I started searching online forums, Reddit threads, obscure travel blogs. That's when I came across something odd. A user on an old trucker message board described stopping at a roadside motel off Route 70 near Breezewood in 1997. He said it looked abandoned from the outside, but one door was open. The inside reminded him of his grandmother's house. He described the wallpaper, the clock, the mirror, and that when he left, there were no tire marks behind him. Another post, more recent from 2014, talked about temporary lodging phenomena. Allegedly, structures that appear during cognitive stress events, fatigue, trauma, isolation. Places that mirror personal memories to lull people into staying. They were called false lodgings, temporary buildings, no record, no permits, no staff. I dug deeper. A university paper from 2002 documented 5 similar cases, rural locations, short stays, similar architectural design. Each one vanished after a single night. I didn't know what to make of it. Then she showed me the photo. She'd taken it while I was at the front desk that night. Just a quick snapshot. She had meant to capture the weird mirror behind the receptionist. At first glance, it looked normal, grainy, slightly tilted. But then she zoomed in. Behind the receptionist's head, reflected in the glass, were 2 eyes. Not hers. Different shape, wide open, unblinking, looking directly at the camera. She had taken the photo alone. We stared at it in silence. We never stayed in motels after that. Only chain hotels. Only places with receipts, reviews, and addresses we could verify. Still, sometimes when we drive at night, I see signs on back roads, hand-painted ones, names I don't recognize. I never follow them. And if you're ever on Route 70 near Breezewood, don't stop for the night, even if you're tired, even if it feels familiar, especially then. Did you enjoy the content and it made a difference for you? Click on Super Thanks and support our work. Story 3. He said he was a park ranger, but there was no park. This happened to me and my friend Derek in the summer of 2021. We were both trying to get out of the city. Derek had just finished his EMT certification, and I'd been working from home non-stop since the pandemic started. We needed air, trees, somewhere with no Wi-Fi and no deadlines. Derek found a place. It was called Briar Lake, Not a real campsite, just an unmaintained loop off an old Forest Service road in northern Oregon. He'd seen it mentioned on a backcountry forum. No facilities, no people, but peaceful. He sent me a screenshot of the thread with coordinates. I dropped a pin and told him I was in. We drove up early Friday morning. The trail was rough, steep at times and unmarked, but we made it to the ridge before sunset. We pitched our tent near the waterline, made a fire, cooked some foil-wrapped food, and talked about nothing. No signal, no sounds but the occasional owl and the crackling of the wood. It was calm in a way I'd forgotten I missed. Around 9:30 p.m., a man appeared at the edge of the clearing. He didn't approach immediately, just stood with his hands at his sides, maybe 20 feet off. His jacket was dark green, official-looking. The reflective patch over his chest read, Forest Stewardship Unit. His belt had a flashlight and what looked like a small radio. He smiled. "You boys camping overnight?" His tone was easy, casual. I looked at Derek. He gave a small nod and waved. "Yeah, hope that's okay." "Sure," the man said. "Just checking. Some new burn ordinances came down this week." He didn't ask to see a permit, just told us not to wander too far from the ridge and that the lake trail hadn't been maintained in years. Said his name was Paul. "Ranger Paul," he smiled. "If you see a black bear, just act big. They usually don't care much around here." He stayed for a minute, made a joke about raccoons stealing gear, then nodded, stepped back into the dark, and vanished between the trees. It wasn't weird at the time. Remote campsites always had random patrols, people whose jobs were more about presence than enforcement. We turned in around midnight. The next morning, I checked the photos on my phone. Shots I'd taken of the lake, the fire, some goofy selfies with Derek. One stood out. It was a group shot. I didn't remember taking it. It showed me and Derek sitting near the fire, heads turned mid-laugh. Behind us, maybe 10 feet back, was Paul. Only his eyes were open, too wide. And he wasn't smiling. He was looking directly at the camera, and his eyelids weren't there. I zoomed in, checked again. It wasn't a trick of the light. His eyes were exposed. No folds of skin, no lashes, no blink. Just two dry, unblinking spheres staring directly into the lens. I didn't say anything at first, just stared. Derek leaned over. "What's that one?" He took one look and went quiet. "That? When did you take that?" I told him I hadn't. I checked the metadata. 9:41 p.m. A few minutes after Paul left the fire. Only, it looked like it had been taken from the tree line. The angle was wrong. Too far back to be from our phone tripod, and neither of us remembered setting a timer. We scrolled through the rest. Nothing unusual. Except that one. We tried laughing it off, told ourselves maybe he came back for a second, said something funny and we didn't hear it. But the rest of the day felt thinner, as if something had already stepped through and left the door open. The next afternoon, we hiked a nearby ridge. The sun was out, air dry, trail unmarked, but worn enough to follow. It felt good to walk. We made it back around 5, but the site wasn't how we left it. The fire pit was gone, not disturbed. Not scattered, gone, like it had never been there. The stones we'd arranged the night before were missing, not moved, absent, no soot, no ash, no hole in the dirt, just smooth ground. The tent was still there, but something about it was wrong. The poles had changed. They weren't the aluminum stakes we'd used. They looked natural. Branches, stripped and carved to a near-perfect match, but clearly organic. The ends were jagged and uneven, still damp in places. One of the sleeping bags was missing. Mine. I checked the inside of the tent. Empty, no sign of struggle, no rips, no soil or leaves or debris. Just space. The zipper was wide open, pulled down smooth, like someone had unzipped it from inside. Derek was standing nearby. He said nothing. I asked if he'd moved anything. He shook his head. I started checking around the site. Maybe an animal dragged it. Maybe we packed it differently. But the backpack was still sealed. Our cooking gear undisturbed. Even the cooler hadn't been touched. We found nothing. No prints, no marks, no reason. I suggested packing up, hiking back down, but he didn't want to do that in the dark. We argued for a bit, eventually agreed to stay one more night and leave first light. We slept with our boots on, headlamps in our pockets, no fire, just a dim lantern between us. That night I kept waking up, not to sounds but to silence, a different kind of silence, like everything around us had shut off. No wind, no insects, just air. At one point I thought I heard breathing outside, not heavy, not human, just long, timed inhales, drawn out and controlled, like something mimicking how it thought people breathed. I held still, felt the edge of the tent fabric shift once. Then nothing. In the morning, everything was how we'd left it. Except the backpack. The zipper was open, only an inch, but enough. Inside, nothing had been taken, but a single pine needle had been placed across the top, perfectly straight. We hiked out that morning without speaking much. It took 3 hours. Once we had signal, Derek tried calling the local forest office to report the weird interaction. Only they didn't have a ranger Paul. But they didn't have a forest stewardship unit either. There was no Briar Lake on their maps, not even as a runoff zone or dried basin. We tried every variation, searched old trail guides, blogs, forums, nothing, just blank forest miles wide. We thought about reporting the incident as a trespass, but what would we say? A ranger with no eyelids told us not to wander, that our tent changed materials overnight. We let it go. 2 nights later, we rented a remote cabin near Crater Lake, just to get a proper night's rest. It was small, 1 bedroom, single-pane windows, front porch with a bench swing, no Wi-Fi, minimal electricity. The second night we turned in early. Around 2 a.m. I woke up to a sound. 3 knocks, not frantic, not casual, measured even. 1, 2, 3, on the window next to the bed. I sat up slowly. Derek was already awake. I saw his silhouette sitting upright, frozen. I waited. No more knocks, just silence. We stayed still for what felt like minutes. Then I heard the sound of wood flexing, something on the porch. I crawled toward the edge of the bed and peeked through the curtain. The porch was empty, but on the bench, something rested there. A ranger's hat, folded around a pine cone, still dripping, water pooled underneath it, dark and spreading. Not rainwater, it hadn't rained in days. The texture was different, thicker. I turned to Derek. He was staring at his phone. He'd opened the camera. A photo from the tent, 2 nights before, was now marked taken 3:17 a.m. We hadn't used our phones that night. The image was black at first, but when you brightened it, you could just make out the tent wall. And inside it, faint, distorted, was a face, pressed against the fabric from outside. No mouth, no nose, just eyes, wide, lidless, staring inward. We left the cabin at sunrise. No refund, no questions. And when we checked our phones again, the photo was gone, replaced with a generic landscape image from months ago. We still don't know what we saw, but sometimes I dream about the knock. 3 times, always the same, always followed by silence, and a pine-scented breath just behind the door.